Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Friday Ramblings. I am the Bardic One. That means I am your perpetual host of all things rambling. That's what I do. That's why we're here, because it's Friday. So let's take a trip, and I do mean a trip because when you're dealing with speedsters, everything goes fast. That means you cover a lot of distance. We're heading into the world of DC Comics to break down the history of the multiple people to take on the identity of the Flash. Now, it's going to be a little more complicated than that initially sounds, because you can't talk about the Flash without talking about Kid Flash, which of course is an identity used by a couple people who would go on to become the Flash, as well as Impulse, another codename legacy that all ties into the nature of the Flash. So real quick breakdown. What makes the Flash the Flash? Well, simply put, all Flashes are noted for having super speed, as well as a few various other lesser powers tied into super speed, such as accelerated healing and metabolism, and for some of them, the ability to, by vibrating their own body at extreme speeds, pass through solid objects. Now, in and of itself, that may not sound impressive, but here's the thing to remember. Speed is a major component of force. The faster you move your fist, the harder it's going to hit. So if you can move your fist at super speeds, you can actually hit about as hard as any superhero can hit. Now, what kind of super speeds are we talking about? We're talking about multiple Machs, as in M-A-C-H. For those people not familiar with that measurement of speed, Mach 1 is the speed of sound, which means when something, usually a vehicle, hits Mach 1, they break the sound barrier and you generate a sonic boom. Thus, you start getting up to things like Mach 2, Mach 3, and you are going many times over the speed of sound, which is way faster than anything any human will ever run. Seriously, like, a normal human in the real world is not going to break the sound barrier from pure running. But Flashes can do that as a joke. They break the sound barrier without even trying at this point. Because, as I said, they can hit multiple Mach speeds. In fact, one of the Flashes has actually demonstrated, by pushing his speed to its absolute limits, being able to, for short distances, hit the speed of light. Unfortunately, because of various types of physics, approaching light speed tends to cause damage to their physical body. One more interesting science breakdown for you, because over the decades, Flash comics have gotten into the science of speed. All Flashes possess a aura around their body that prevents their body from actually burning due to the intense speed they're running at. This being a case of some simple physics where, again, the faster you run, the more heat your body's generating, and specifically anything you run against. Say, that old trick, you rub your hands. The faster you rub your hands, the warmer they get. Yeah, imagine doing that at faster speed of sound. You would literally burn the skin off your body, but the Flashes can avoid it because of that aura that protects their body from the superheated air they're traveling through, or anything they rub up against at super speed, avoiding things catching on fire immediately. So, who are your Flashes? How many are there? it's time for the big bad breakdown. Also, we forgot the most important part. To be a Flash, you got to wear an outfit with a lot of red on it. Red with a little bit of yellow highlights is the recurring uniform theme of the Flashes. The original Flash appeared in January 1940 and is Jay Garrick of the Justice Society of America, as well as the All-Star Squadron, and has served as a reservist member of a few different versions of the Justice League. Jay Garrick is noted, besides being part of the golden age of DC superheroes, as having filled a few various interesting notes over the decades. He is one of the few superheroes who never technically wore a mask. This is because early in his career, when he would run as the Flash, he would actually do this with his face, moving it side to side slightly, and at super speeds, this gave his face a blurred effect, so nobody could see any details of who he was. All they saw was a blur. He did, however, wear a shiny metal hat with little lightning bolts as a reference to Hermes, a Greek god that was known for being able to travel at great speeds, along with the red shirt and dark blue pants. Jay Garrick has been a superhero in good standing for many years, and in the modern incarnations of the Justice Society of America is noted as being one of the most encouraging of the younger heroes. He is the one that fell into the father figure mentor role most easily of the veteran Justice Society members, due to the fact that he, and this is unfortunately rare in the superhero world, has a very long-standing, happy marriage to his love, Joan Garrick, who is a non-powered civilian character. And thus, Jay has always managed to maintain a stable, normal life outside of the superhero suit. This, along with the fact that Joan and Jay were never able to have children of their own, which was revealed in a story in the Modern Justice Society of America volumes, lends to, as I said, the explanation of why he always excelled as a father figure and mentor in his veteran years as a superhero. Because he was a man that had always wanted to be a father, never got to be a father to any children of his own, and so sees the younger heroes, whether they are the modern members of the Justice Society or even a lot of the Justice Leaguers, as metaphorical children. So he always had a patient, understanding way of dealing with them, especially when they screwed up, as opposed to some of his other Justice Society buddies like Wildcat, who perfectly willing to teach somebody how to fight, but really wasn't so much up for teaching them how to be a good person. What can you say? Wildcat's a boxer at heart. He is who he is. Now, Jay Garrick has occasionally attempted retirement, but due to his experience, he is always happy to get pulled back into action after so long, especially when those major world-destroying crises show up. He's most often pulled back into action by the later Flashes, who, as I've said before, are always happy to have him play their mentor father figure, as they have respect for the man who started the Flash legacy. Next up would be Barry Allen. Now, Barry Allen is the one most people know of from your various movies and TV shows, as he was the first Flash of the Silver Age and the one that really kind of started spawning direct tie-in legacies. So, Barry Allen originally appeared in October of 1956 and is iconic for being the character whose solo book first introduced the idea of the DC multiverse in the story Flash of Two Worlds, where he met up with the aforementioned Jay Garrick for the first time and created the Earth 1, Earth 2 crossover stories that would perpetuate for the next few decades in DC, involving the entire League and the entire society, as well as some others over the years. Now, Barry Allen is famous for being a police scientist, and therefore bringing a level of professional law enforcement training to his superhero career as the Flash. Barry, like Jay, would eventually marry the love of his life, Iris Allen. Unfortunately, their marriage has not always been happy and stable due to one or the other being dead or presumed dead for long periods of time throughout their marriage. So, kind of hard to go home to the wife when one of y'all's dead or stuck in an alternate future or just plain lost in the multiverse. These things tended to be a recurring theme for Barry. However, whenever Barry and Iris were together, they were a very happy couple and very much in love, so props to them. Barry also is one of the characters who had one of the longest deaths that was eventually retconned out with his resurrection in DC history, as Barry died in the 80s in Crisis on Infinite Earths and did not reappear until 23 years after his death. Now, there were cameo stories where he was believed to have come back from dead, or due to the time travel shenanigans that Barry Allen introduced the Flash legacy. I'm going to touch on that real quick. Give me half a sec to finish this thought. You would get temporary returns of Barry, but yes, it took 23 years for Barry to return proper to the DC universe as part of the Final Crisis storyline. Now, as I said, Barry Allen introduced a bit of time travel shenanigans to the Flash legacy. This would mostly center around use of his cosmic treadmill, which helped him when he would travel at near light speeds make sure he hit his destinations, and as a scientist gave him exploring and new knowledge to pursue. The cosmic treadmill would appear later on, involving stories with the Third Flash, and serve as one of the iconic references to the Flash as a character. After all, there have been assorted time machines, but none of them worked by channeling a superhero's natural speed. It is really quite literally a classic treadmill in appearance, and thus the term's not even a joke. He basically took a treadmill, added some extra sci-fi parts to it, and pew! Can go to different dimensions, can go to different time periods. It's one of those wacky sci-fi concepts that really defined the Flash legacy in the Silver Age. That was one of the things about Barry, his involvement with, for instance, the Talking Gorillas of Gorilla City. His comics, much more than Jay's, were noted for having a lighthearted science fiction feel to them, which did fit in the greater DC universe. Barry Allen would be a long-standing member of the Justice League, as well as Star Labs and the Central City Police Department, due to his, as I said, civilian career as a police scientist. Here's where we start getting involved in some of the sub-legacies. During Barry Allen's run as the Flash, his nephew Wally West would suffer a eerily similar incident to the one that gave Barry Allen his powers, a lightning bolt hitting a variety of chemicals that then splashed the person, allowing Wally West to become the first Kid Flash. Now, Wally appeared as Kid Flash initially in December of 1959, so not that long after Barry Allen himself got his career started. Wally would take up the legacy of the Flash in March of '86, almost immediately upon the confirmation of Barry Allen's death in the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Wally would serve as the Flash for multiple decades himself, joining the Justice League, as well as continuing his affiliation with the Teen Titans, which had started while he was Kid Flash. At this, honestly, Wally's my favorite Flash. To me, he is the Flash because, you know, Barry, as great as a hero as he always was not exactly the most charming and charismatic personality. Honestly, a lot of the characters you see in modern media adaptations, they are called Barry. They have his basic family history, but the more interesting parts of his personality are kind of cribbed from Wally, to be honest. This, in a lot of ways, serves as Wally's legacy, in that he would eventually prove himself to be just as good, if not a better hero than his mentor, Uncle Barry, but over time, he has become one of the great debates in comics: who's the better Flash, Barry or Wally? As I said, my vote is on Wally. Now, Wally himself would, despite in his younger years being quite the ladies' man, including most infamously using his super speed to quite literally speed date multiple women in the same night, he settled down with journalist Linda Park, who would of course become Linda Park West. She does later go to medical school, so she is both a journalist and medic, which is very excellent for dealing with various superheroes. Now, over the years, Wally would also create another interesting legacy to the Flashes. During Barry's time as Flash, he had various villains who he would counter regularly, who would start teaming up as a full group, although they still never really got a definitive victory over Barry. They would take the name the Rogues, after the iconic term Rogues Gallery, and serve as one of DC's most iconic villain teams. Years later, when Wally West takes up the mantle of the Flash and the Rogues figure out this is not the same Flash, which initially Wally wanted most of the world to believe, to maintain the aura of, you know, immortality that a lot of superheroes had in the eyes of regular civilians, the Rogues would go on to take a more less antagonistic, kind of neutral alignment relationship with Wally, including some of the Rogues actually reforming and striking genuine friendships with Wally West. although the core rogues, such as Captain Cold and Boomerang, would always be lawbreakers. However, hey, we don't want to draw too much heat and be the kind of evil that does crazy, insane stunts. We just like having money, even if it's not ours to, through hard work. They never actually had the kind of murderous antagonistic relationship that a Lex Luthor Superman did. In fact, they themselves would often chastise other villains for trying to kill superheroes, pointing out, dude, you kill one of them, you are going to bring insane heat down on your head. This, as I said, makes a very interesting part of Wally's legacy as a Flash, as he took what had been major villains for his predecessor, kind of kept them in line and was willing to throw them in jail when they messed up, but had a much less antagonistic relationship with them, being willing to treat them as human beings, including occasionally socializing with some of the members who were, as I said before, willing to attempt reform at various points. So where does that bring us? Well, that brings us to one of the more interesting cases, and this is Bart Allen. Now, Bart Allen was introduced in 1994 and brings in the Impulse legacy. He was originally known as Impulse when introduced in 1994. Would become the second Kid Flash in 2003. And upon Wally West's retirement, temporarily, become the fourth Flash in 2006. Although this turn only lasted another couple years himself before his powers were temporarily halted and he was beaten to death. Bart would later be resurrected by the Legion of Superheroes, which included his cousin, fellow speedster XS, as in that's her codename, X and the letter S. It's kind of hard to, there we go. Kind of hard to make an S shape. XS, sure. We try our best here, folks. Who were from the far future and had crazy technology. Bart himself actually was, like his cousin XS, from the far future, but was sent back in time so that he could learn how to stabilize his powers and use them responsibly under the mentorship of Wally West. When Bart Allen was revived, he went back to using the Kid Flash moniker. Bart would serve as a member of the infamous Young Justice team, as well as a later incarnation of the Teen Titans. Now, Bart is a fun character in his own right, and seeing his character's maturity over a span of 12 years to go from Impulse to taking on the Flash legacy himself is very interesting to go through, as he went from having basically no concept of danger or really morality, except that being a hero sounds fun, to being a great hero in his own right, who had truly ascended to that legacy of the Flash and was capable of being highly responsible under that costume. Now, this leaves us with our last note. This is more of a trivia note than anything. And that is that Wally West would eventually have twins with his wife Linda. Twins were born with super speed that unfortunately was, like Bart's, highly unstable. But since their powers emerged even younger than his did, their tiny bebe bodies couldn't handle it. Tiny little bebes, after all. So, Wally had to use his own speed and his occasionally used trick of stealing others' speed to temporarily take the speed out of them, but channeled it completely into his daughter, Iris West, aka Ira. She would, now being stable in her super speed, take on the Impulse identity in the regular timeline, and in the far future alternate reality story Kingdom Come, take on the Kid Flash identity. Now, we really haven't seen much from Iris West as the new Impulse. She's basically a supporting character in Wally West's books, but she is there. She is the future of this multi-codename spanning legacy. As I said, in one alternate future, she became Kid Flash. There's nothing to say she might not eventually take that moniker from Bart herself. After all, she's already become Impulse. She's traveling the same path he is. Will Barry eventually die/retire again? Will Wally ever do the same and let Bart have a second go-round as the Flash? What about Jay? Technically, at one point, due to Barry's resurrection and Jay's inability to stay dead no matter how many gray hairs he gets, or even stay retired, we actually had, technically, 3 Flashes using the Flash name, although different looking costumes, but thematically similar. I said it's all about that red and yellow, operating at the same time. Along with a Kid Flash. So, why do we discuss all these? Well, it's simple. As I said, every major superhero team in DC Comics has had a Flash. The Justice Society of America, Justice League's had 2. In Barry and Wally. Wally was a standing member of the Teen Titans for many of its incarnations, and even when he was a full leaguer in the last few versions of the Titans, he was always willing to help out for old time's sake. And of course, by that point, Bart was in there as Impulse and later Kid Flash. So there you go. Even the Legion of Superheroes kind of, sort of, maybe has a pseudo-Flash in long-standing member XS. You know, they are one of the great backbones of DC Comics. Barry Allen's death is one of the most remembered aspects of the Crisis of Infinite Earths due to it being a very self-sacrificing, heroic demise. Wally West's career and his seeming demise, but technically peaceful retirement, was an aspect of the sequel Infinite Crisis, and Bart and Barry's returns during Final Crisis were hallmark moments of that event. So, it's like every time there's a major DC event, one of the Flashes will play a noticeable role. You can't go far in DC without bumping up with one of those red and yellow speedsters. Everybody looks at Superman and Batman for good cause. You might even get people pointing out the various Green Lanterns, which we will totally cover one day. At least the Earthbound ones. You get into the Green Lantern Corps and there's literally thousands of members. It gets pretty crazy. I might do a separate video just on iconic, long-standing members of the Green Lantern Corps. But The Flash is right up there. As I said, various media adaptations have had the Flash. The excellent DC animated universe. The Flash, this time as Wally West, not Barry Allen for once, was a member of the Justice League throughout the Justice League and its sequel Justice League Unlimited series. And Bart and Wally showed up in the Young Justice TV series. The DC live actionverse has a version of Barry. Of course, the CW shared universe of shows. The Flash is, well, basically it's the spine of the entire shared universe. I know a lot of people call it the Arrowverse because Arrow kind of came first, but you know, Flash is the one that they've used to launch the idea of their multiverse, and it's kind of eclipsed Arrow in popularity. So, you know, yeah, give credit where it's due. You can't discuss DC without discussing the Flash, which is why hopefully I've encouraged you to research these characters a little bit. I personally say lean towards Wally West, his tenure throughout the Teen Titans and the post-Crisis on Infinite Earth versions of the Justice League have been very great runs for the character with a lot of interesting story arcs. But, you know, go however you want. Tell me in the comments, who's your favorite Flash or Kid Flash? Which Impulse do you prefer? Bart or Iris? Maybe one of those alternate reality counterparts. I don't know, throw those in. Yeah. Either way, like, comment, subscribe, stick around because there is a lot more DC Legacy going on. This legacy started with a member of the Justice Society. We broke down the Justice Society and how it basically built DC Comics, mostly due to legacies like the Flash perpetuating even after the society itself fell apart and gave way to the League. Green Lantern's in there too, and even, technically, Superman and Batman. There's a video all in itself. Now, Superman and Batman were in the society, and then they weren't in the society. And they kind of were again. It gets into the whole cosmic universe, multiverse resetting nonsense that DC loves to do. It's interesting reading, but you kind of got to make sure you cover it all. That's definitely a breakdown for another video. But we'll also throw in some Marvel love in the coming weeks and months. So always keep your eyes peeled when we do a comic book rambling. And remember, if you're going to run, run fast. Like the lightning. Flash is going to get ya.